Happy New Year, guys. It's 2025. Happy New Year to viewers and subscribers of Geopolitics with Abu. Please, if you are viewing this show and you've not subscribed, do subscribe, like, and follow us. This year, 2025, is going to be very, very exciting. I'll be bringing guests. I'll be doing solo analysis, bringing in guests, and there will be very, very much exciting content on this page. Today, my guest is Fidel Housu, a very, very, very renowned. In fact, I'll call him an encyclopedia in African geopolitics. His LinkedIn page is full of information that you will want to also know on African geopolitics and Middle East and global affairs in general. He's the CEO of DevSec, uh, a consultancy founded in March 2023 to give strategic advice and solutions in security and defense matters in Africa. Thank
Thanks,
you for
thanks
joining
for
me,
having
Fidel.
me, Abu,
Okay.
and nice words. I appreciate it.
Thank you. First of all, before we get right into it, I want to congratulate the National Democratic Congress, your party, which you're an active member of, for winning the recent Ghanaian election. It also has, apart from winning the presidency, it also from parliamentary majority. What is your message for Ghanaian youth as President John Dramani Mahama has taken office and he has started his second term in office?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the well wishes that you have for myself and Ghanaians. The anticipation is very high. The expectations are also very high because this is a man who has served his first term in office between 2013 and 2017, and so he's not new to the job. And so we expect that he hit the ground running, and already he has started some major or made some major decisions. For instance, just this morning, he reduced the number of ministries in Ghana from 30 to 23. That is very significant because he wants to run an efficient government that is not bloated. The past government, yes, I have my biases because I wasn't a member of that party, but then, with all fairness, I would say that the government was too huge, and that really brought us a lot of problems. Currently, we are subscribing a new IMF deal that comes with a lot of austerity measures. And so, with these cuts in the number of ministries, and he has also promised that he is going to cut the number of ministers from 100 and over 120 to 60. That is about half. So that means an efficient government, and we would ask that Ghanaian youth be patient with him so that he put down the necessary measures, create the solid foundation upon which other benefits may come so that all can benefit. Thank you very much, Abu.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let's get right into it. Today, guys, we'll be doing the security and geopolitical forecast for 2025 for Africa, with the highest number of countries in the world and the second largest continent. The security and geopolitical dynamics in the continent remain very, very complex. Let's take a look at West Africa. You asserted in one of your LinkedIn posts that the junta-led states will dominate airlines for not providing timeline for democratic transitions, and we've seen it going on with Guinea, Mali, and others. And I want to, before I let you jump in with analysis, I want to give a security overview of what is going on in the West African region, particularly in the junta-led states. In Burkina Faso, throughout the last year, and it's been engulfed in a conflict with JIM militants, which you call Jamaatul Nasir wal Islam militants. It has resulted into mass killings of soldiers, the Volunteer for Defense Force of the Homeland, which they call the VDP, and then the civilians. And especially these conflicts, violence have taken place in the northern region, the central region, the Sahel region, and the eastern region. The eastern region has the violence, the JNIM violence in the eastern region. It has transnational implications. It has enabled the JNIM to consolidate operations and presence in the coastal states of Togo, Ghana, and even Benin Republic. And this has implications, security implications. In Mali, don't worry, I'll give uh, um, just a quick rundown, then I'll allow you to analyze them. In Mali, the Tuareg militants, and in conjunction with the JNM militants, in conjunction with JNM and Tuareg, the Tuareg rebels and the JNI militants, they joined, they moved force together and defeated the Wagner mercenaries in July 2024 in the Kidal region. This marked the largest defeat of the Wagner group in the African continent till date. And after that, they launched a sophisticated attack in Bamako and temporarily captured the Bamako International Airport and got a lot of video for propaganda. In Niger Republic, it continues to face challenges from multiple militant groups, especially within the Niger-Mali border, Niger-Nigerian border, Niger-Burkina Faso border. And I want to talk about the Niger-Nigerian border a bit because, the Lakurawa group that came into light recently, that had been an offshoot of JNM border. They're active in the Nigerian northwestern border, which comprises of 8 states, large swath of ungovernable spaces. I want to bring you in here to come and give us a breakdown of an analysis of what is going on in your region, following these explanations I just made.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is a very interesting overview that you've given. Yes, this is true. The security situation in West Africa is very fluid and unpredictable, to say the least. In fact, before JNIM coordinated that sophisticated attack in Bamako, uh, nobody expected it so immediately. We knew that the Malian forces, with their Wagner backing, is not really doing so much in Mali in terms of, making advances. The rebels were very entrenched, and jihadists have been very aggressive. However, we did not expect an immediate attack in the capital because the capital was well fortified. We looked like the junta was in control of Bamako, but they did it. And this shows the kind of vulnerabilities and porous situation that we have in the country called Mali, which is the second largest country in ECOWAS West Africa before this schism. And in Burkina Faso, these vigilante groups that were formed have not also helped, because what happened was that these groups take ethnic coloration, and when you use ethnicity to fight terrorism, you worsen the situation. So the attacks are sometimes indiscriminate, like the Fulbe or the Fulani groups that have been attacked indiscriminately. They end up joining extremists, and this is a kind of a retrogression, or what we say cos 90 effort, which results in more insecurity in the region. In Niger, which is relatively better, we still have a situation in the southwest because of Burkina Faso sharing border with Niger, and what we call the 3 border regions between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. We also have extremists roaming almost freely and actually governing some spaces. So these are major issues that are going to confront us in 2025. In fact, I mentioned that the situation will top headlines in the region because currently we don't have any serious roadmap towards transition. I was in Togo in 2022 when 2023, late 2023, when the junta in Niger promised, because the interior minister for the junta government was in Lomé during the conference, and they promised that they needed 3 years window to transfer power. But we've not seen anything tangible on the ground to show that they want to really transfer power. So with that happening, and same thing happening in Burkina Faso, and then in Mali, we are expecting that the mainstream politicians or the political class are going to eventually protest. In fact, everyone seems to fear the gun and the bullets that comes from it. But when there is no other solution, people, I mean, say to hell with the gun and they'll be in the street. How many people are you going to kill? So that is why leaders like Gaddafi have been deposed. Leaders like Bashar Assad and others have been deposed because they had the weapons. But at a point, the people become fearless, and it could lead to so many things. Another thing is that apart from the protest, we could also have counter coups because in the military institutions, we don't have unanimity. There are many officers in the military who are not happy with those junta that are in charge of their respective countries, and that counter coups could happen. In Burkina Faso, we've seen a lot of counter coups that have been foiled, and I don't see that ending because within the military, there is less unanimity. You can talk about that especially in Mali and Burkina Faso, because in Niger, those in charge are generals. And when generals are in charge already, they have control over the unity of command or chain of command. But in Mali and in Burkina Faso, the officers are middle rank officers, colonels and captains who are at the top. So there are senior officers who may not be happy, or junior officers who may not be happy with the way things are being run. And so on the civilian side, protests may happen, and on the military as an institution, we may see counter coups or insurrections that could also be concerning for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those explanations. Before I talk about power competitions in the region, I want to talk about the fact that African youth seem to enjoy the military coup and support it in the region. And there is currently a growing anti-Western sentiment, uh, especially within the African youth groups, not only in the West African region, the whole African region per se. Because even when Captain Traore came to Ghana for the inauguration, we saw Ghanaian youth cheering him and all that. And in Nigeria, it's the same too in Nigeria and other countries too. When you talk to people to get their perspective on geopolitics, they seem to have anti-Western views. How can we address this, or what can do not we what can the West do, to address this growing anti-Western sentiment in the continent, in West Africa and the continent at large?
So before you can address a problem, you have to be conscious of a number of factors.
Yeah.
And what are these factors? Firstly, demographics. Now, ECOWAS was created by military leaders, largely. It was General Yakubu Gowon, Nyaksimbe Ayedema, not Nyaksimbe, yes, Nyaksimbe Ayedema, and General Ignatius Kutu Echampong of Ghana. These three gentlemen were the spearheads of ECOWAS. They came together to make sure that ECOWAS was established. At the time, the civilian leaders in West Africa were led by Houphouët Boigny, the former president of Cote d'Ivoire. In fact, they didn't want to get along with the military leaders in the creation of ECOWAS. But eventually, ECOWAS was created in 1975, and then the political harmonization or liberalization was never part of the aims because these were men in uniform. They didn't want to talk about politics. They didn't want to talk about transitions and civilian rule and all that. But after the Cold War, many countries in West Africa started moving towards democracy. And that was when the ECOWAS protocol on good governance was created in order to make sure that the use of coup d'etats to take control of power and other things had to stop. But back to demography. Now, many of the youth who are jubilant or who are jubilating or cheering these coup makers or military leaders did never experience military coups in the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s. You have General Abacha in your shirt. Many youth today never experienced him.
Yes.
Ibrahim IBB. Many
Ibrahim
youth in Nigeria
Babangida.
never experienced IBB. And
Yeah.
they say, well, he started Abuja as a capital and he did well and all that. Now, the human rights issues, the use of decrees, the use
Yeah.
of whimsical decisions to control, nobody is interested in that. And sometimes their parents tell them in a more nostalgic way that, oh, those days are better days. And there's something very interesting. Every generation thinks that the previous generation had a better time. And that
Yeah.
is what is happening. Currently, the youth want to experience the soldiers. They want that kind of strong leadership. They see Putin and say, yes, that's a strong leader. Putin is throwing his opponent through the windows and poisoning people overseas. And they say, yes, that's a strong leader. We want strong leaders. But they don't know the cost or the
Yeah.
ramifications of having such leaders. In that one, and the irony is that many youth also want to be heard in their own countries. They want to be heard. They want to speak so that people hear them. They want to contribute to national development. But how do you do that with a leader that will not tolerate criticism? Because there is a sense to which you can criticize. When these two
Yeah.
leaders emerged in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, many were happy. Currently, is it the same situation? In Guinea, youth are being killed because they are
In fact,
protesting.
most of them, their capitals have now even experienced attacks from these militants. So the security situation is not worse. Go ahead. Sorry for cutting you off.
Yes. And even apart from that, the youth that want to participate, that want to criticize, that want to speak boldly are not able to speak because the military has the extent to which it can tolerate dissent. Because per their training, it's obeying before complaining. And
Yeah.
so when they want to rule, that is the kind of tenets or qualities that they rule with. So there's a even when military leaders have said, oh, you can express yourself, there is an extent to which you can go. And when you go overboard, it could be fatal. And we are seeing it in Guinea, in Mali, in Burkina Faso. Niger is relatively better because that is the youngest coup in the Sahel or in West Africa. So with time, as the transition is not happening, many people could pour in the street and result in that. Now, what the West must do is that one, they should separate socio-cultural policies from political and defense policies. If you come to West Africa and you tell them that apart from male and female, there's another gender that they must accept, they will always have issues.
Yeah.
Myself, as I sit here, I never want my children to grow up thinking that there is a man can marry a man and a woman can marry a woman can marry a woman. I don't want that. Now, one thing is this: I will not go to someone's country and tell them what to do. That a man should not marry a man or see someone doing that and attack the person. No, I wouldn't do that. So if you are going to support me with guns to fight terrorism, don't attach the issue of gay rights and things like that to those guns. And the military junta, who are dictators, are taking advantage of that to actually make the West look bad in Africa. So I think that one of the best ways is for the West to separate these things. Because in the 50s, the West, many Western countries did not tolerate homosexuality and things like that. And yet they survived. So it takes time for people, even if you think that people will accept it, it will take time, even if you think so.
Yeah.
But per our values, we are predominantly Christian and Muslims. On the African side, if we do not want an imposition of some Western values, recent Western values, like these gay rights and things like that, we must also do well to be more responsible for our security, our economic stuff and all that. That's why some of us support the new Ghanaian leader, because when you cut down the size of government, you will have enough money to save so that you wouldn't always go begging for people to tell you what values you should accept. So these are all security issues that we must look at, because security is not all about the guns, but also about values. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So from that now, let's now go into the power competition in the region. Let me start from my own analysis. I want to talk about the power competition going on in the region. It seemed to me that the US have adopted a coastal strategy in engaging with West Africa, going by its recent engagement. First of all, we now know that the soldiers from the US soldiers from the military base in Agadez, Niger, they'll be transferred to Benin Republic. We'll also talk about Benin Republic because of the recent attacks, which might have connections with the recent presence of the US in the country. We're also seeing the US engaging Ivory Coast. Secretary Blinken visited Cote d'Ivoire recently, some few days ago, and deals with energy have been signed. Please, can you help us unpack this new US coastal strategy in West Africa, in the Gulf of Guinea?
All right. Thank you very much. Mid last year, I was in a
Yeah.
conference, a military conference in Ghana,
Mm.
which was backed by the United States. The United States African Command General Langley addressed that
Yeah.
conference, and I had a privilege of attending the conference.
Yeah.
Now, the US is very particular about coastal Africa, not just because of the kind of pushback from the military juntas in the Sahel, but also
Yeah.
because of the strategic position of the region, which lies on the Gulf of Guinea, which is part of the larger Atlantic Ocean. Now, Abu, you know very well that if Russia is allowed to dominate the Gulf of Guinea, then it means that there is no hurdle or no obstacle between Russia and the eastern part of US, because then it is a whole sea to the place. Now, US want to avoid that because that Equatorial Guinea is almost granting a total fiat for Russia to be present in the country, and because of the position of Bioko, the island where the Malabo, the capital of Equatorial Guinea, is located, is more closer to Nigeria than you think. It's even closer to Nigeria than it is closer to the mainland of Equatorial Guinea. And so US want to really fortify its allies, or really revamp the capabilities of its allies on the West African coast in order to actually challenge this. Again, back
Oh.
to the Sahel, with Russia and China actually having more control in the Sahel, the US wouldn't want to abandon the whole region because the region has a lot of resources. Like Blinken is signing deals in Cote d'Ivoire. It also has growing market. Nigeria is the largest, the country with the largest population in Africa. And apart from Nigeria, we see a lot of population growth happening across the region. So then you would not abandon such a strategic region for any reason. So the US would like to take positions in the coast. And one thing is that US investments are already in the coastal state. In fact, despite the interest in the Sahel, much economic interest that the US and other Western countries have are in the coastal West Africa. You talk of Nigeria, you talk of Cote d'Ivoire, you talk of Ghana, you talk of Senegal, you are talking about Guinea. And you know, by far, Guinea is one of the largest producers of bauxite.
Yeah.
And at the time, it controlled more than 50% of bauxite on the high seas being exported. And so whatever happens in Guinea
Yeah.
is very important to the aluminum industry. And you know, aluminum is
Industry.
what
Yeah.
is used in producing the airplane frames. Very
Yeah.
important. So that is an industry
Yeah.
that is very strategic, and you need that cooperation. And that is one of the main reasons the coup in Guinea is treated differently from that in the Sahel, because Domboya seem to enjoy Western support than states in the Sahel. So these are some of the dynamics that we have to look at. But in 2025, we are going to see the intensification of great power politics in West Africa. And this is the reason. With the coming in of Trump, a lot may happen in Ukraine. Now, Trump has started hardening his stance against Russia. Initially, it was more like a clean slate, or Russia will strike a deal. But Trump is beginning to see the reality, and he's taking more stronger stance against Russia. Now, despite that, he's also likely, because it's unpredictable, he's also likely to say, well, let the war end. And when that ends, it means Russia will have free hand to pursue other foreign policy, like in West Africa. And that would mean that Russia revamping its military strategy in West Africa. So if Wagner is on the back foot currently, If Russia is there's a deal, Russia will have more weapons to bring directly that through direct flight from Moscow to Bamako and other capitals in the Sahel to actually equip its mercenaries to fight rebels and extremists. And that will mean more control in the region. Thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, their recent moving of assets from Syria to Libya is also is also helping them to revamp their operation in the Sahel. Thank you very much for those
Yeah.
analysis. Let's go to Southern and Eastern Africa and I want to talk about the states that are going to be pioneer states for the Lobito project because, as we know, that the Lobito project is going to take a spotlight this year because of the power competition, the growing economic renewed competition between China and US for mineral resources and semiconductors. So they are going to pay attention to the security situation, particularly in those pilot states for the Lobito project. For the DRC, over the past year, conflict between the Congolese government and the Rwanda-backed M23 have intensified with high intensity, with the M23 militants making territorial gains in the eastern part of the country, in places like Kivu and Mesasi. Hopes of a resolution was dashed in December last year, following the collapse of peace talks between the Congolese leader and the Rwandan leader. For Angola, which Indian Ocean, with the coast that is going to transport the minerals to the US. Not really much of a security situation there, but in terms of their economic situation, they've had problems with their high debt servicing, and also in terms of wages, paying wages in the public sector, which can drive protest in urban center, as our ability to drive protest in urban center. That is Angola, and then Zambia too, with the same economic issue. So, can you help us unpack how the security dynamics in those countries that US policymakers will be looking for to watch out for in 2025?
It's very important because one, the DRC has 9 countries bordering it.
Yeah.
It shares border with important countries like Rwanda, Angola, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Republic of Congo, Zambia, Tanzania, Burundi, and or Uganda. Now, with that, it means that whatever happens there has ramifications for multiple countries. And in the first and second Congo wars, we realized that it drew so much people. It created a vortex that drew so much countries over there with a lot of ramifications. Now, Congo, with the fourth largest population on the continent and the second largest territory, you do not let that sink. And that is the reason why these new gains by M23 is worrying. The last time President Kagame was in Ghana for the inauguration, and I mean, he always appear very diplomatic, calm, and all that. But the dynamics in Central Africa, or let's say Eastern Africa, because that is a transitional zone, is very worrying because then you have Rwanda, a small country that is backing these rebels. And on the part of Rwanda, it is saying that there are other Hutu rebels that are being backed by the DRC. And it has always consistently justified its involvement in DRC with that. Now, it was for this reason that this Angola became a mediator to the conflict. But so far, nothing good is happening. And I am tempted to believe that with the change in administration in the US, pressure on Kigali, being the capital of Rwanda, is going down. Because you and I know that Trump does not really care what happens in Africa.
Yes.
Biden is more conscious about these things. And as Democrats, they are more, I mean, the humanism aspect or the human aspect of things is more important to them. But with their exit, it looks like the rebels are emboldened to make more gains in Eastern DRC because the pressure is lowering. A president who is on his way out may not be able to give that pressure. But then again, do we always have to wait for outsiders or outside powers to tell us to maintain peace within Africa? We should be more proactive and more take the initiative ourselves to make sure that there's peace. There is always room for some sort of settlement, but the DRC itself must get its domestic act together. Currently, Felix Tshisekedi, the current president, is giving signal that he wants to run for a third term.
Yeah, I was
Signals.
going
He
to
has
talk
not
about
mentioned it
that.
practically.
Yeah.
Now, Joseph Kabila and other opposition figures have come together to oppose that because Kabila himself wanted to do so, but the church and the larger community rejected him. So if domestically you are not putting your act together, you give neighboring states the opportunity to always interfere and have their way. So that is
Yeah.
one thing that we have to look at. Now let's move to Mozambique because we are talking about Southern and Eastern Africa. Mozambique, after the Cold War, had some peace because it was one of the Portuguese colonies that never saw peace at the dawn of independence because of the hasty way with which independence was granted. It took a coup d'etat in Lisbon in 1974 for independence to happen in Portuguese colonies in Africa. So that meant chaos. Now, after the Cold War, there had been some peace. But recently, with political struggle and other issues like the Al-Shabaab in Mozambique, the terror group terrorizing northern Mozambique, Cabo Delgado, you realize that that country is also in turmoil. Then we have the issue of South Africa after the elections. 2025, we are likely to see the South Africa economy recovering very fast because of the kind of coalition that it has. The the unity government or coalition government that has been formed means that investors are going to have more confidence because they know that the opposition party or a smaller party is in there to make sure that the right thing is done. So that is going to be seen. However, it is the first time South Africa is experiencing this kind of government. So it is tenuous. So it also has the tendency to collapse. And that is something that we have to look out for. In the same South Africa, terror cells are known to be mobilizing resources because of some compromises in the security system or some leeways. So then this is the bigger picture in Eastern and Southern Africa. But we can't leave Kenya. Kenya, in terms of the Indian Ocean coast and in East Africa, is the largest economy. And
Yeah.
I dare say that in the 2025, Kenya is going to be very dominant because it has its own domestic challenges with these abductions and things like that. But it is also one country to look at because it has so much potential in terms of technology, in terms of the economy and all that. So that is something that we have to look at. US has prioritized Kenya, and so is China prioritizing it, and
Yeah.
other powers, India, and the Gulf states, and all,
Great.
including Iran. So that is something we can also look at. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that holistic assessment. And now let's go to the Horn of Africa and North Africa, which, because of its geographical position, maritime access to Indian Ocean, Suez Canal, and the Red Sea, and also they are linked to Europe and West Asia, makes their security interlinked with this region and with regional and complex dynamics. For that, we've seen Turkey. I want to talk about Turkey's. I want to jump to Turkey. We've seen Turkey playing a big role in the region lately, helping to let's say partially resolve the issue between Somalia and Ethiopia, and then not fully resolved. And then we are seeing that it's going to it's going to draw the attention of other geopolitical actors with interest in that region. We know that the UAE is very, very interested in the region, and it has also brought together a strategy of port strategy. UAE has a port strategy in that region to secure critical choke points such as the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab al Mandeb Strait, and the Suez Canal. The UAE, in their attempt to establish themselves as a prominent geopolitical actor in the Middle East, have invested heavily in this maritime shipping region. Before I go back, but not only that, the UAE has also extended it even to Africa, where they are having shipping and port interest in and investment in Guinea, Mozambique, and then they are also having obtaining strategic farmlands in West Africa, which I want to talk about later because of food security in the region. We are seeing the US, we are seeing the UAE obtaining strategic farmlands in that region. But anyway, back to the power competition in the Horn of Africa. How do you think this will play out in 2025 with the US also standing by as a security guarantor in the region, also conjoining with Somalia forces to conduct regular airstrikes on Al-Shabaab and ISIS targets in Somalia and other hotspots in the region?
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Abu.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the UAE, I remember somewhere in 2023, I made a post on the UAE that
Mm.
actually won me a scholarship,
Wow.
and it was about this
Congrats.
this sports. Yeah, thank you. I'm almost done with that.
Oh.
It was about this sports and UAE, its potentials for Africa, and the fact that it is largely seen as a developing country, even though it is a far advanced. And so there's going to be a win-win game with Africa, unlike more powerful nations that we think we cannot negotiate at par with them. I mean, all that. So that is interesting. But Horn of Africa, as you've mentioned, the strategic location of the region makes it very significant for stability of itself and the entire Africa. In the mid 19th century, somewhere in the 1860s, the Suez Canal was built. And by the building of the Suez Canal, it meant that the journey from Europe to India, which used to pass around the whole of Africa through the Cape of Good Hope in Southern Africa all the way to India, was cut. And which means you could just use the Mediterranean, go through the canal, enter the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden onwards to India, which was short journey. That significantly made the region a very strategic place for security. That if you were a nation and you wanted your trade to flow, you needed some form of control or some military presence or some cooperation with countries in the region in order to have that. In the past years, we found a small country known as Djibouti, the smallest country in the Horn of Africa, hosting multiple naval bases.
Yeah.
In fact, they host the US, they host France, they host currently Turkey, they
Mm.
host China.
China. I think it's an
And
important part of their GDP.
yes, and because I mean, this means logistics and all that. Now, with that, the country is one of the most important in the region, despite a smaller size, just like
Yeah.
the role that Qatar has in the Gulf region, despite its
Yeah.
smaller size.
Mm.
But the important thing is that, which means this region must be taken seriously. But there are challenges. What are the challenges? Ethiopia, a long-time power in the region, which access to the coast was truncated because of the independence of Eritrea in the
Yeah.
early 90s, wants to have access to the coast once more. Because
Mm.
according to the Ethiopians, their well-being in the future will depend on how they access the coast. Yes, many countries are landlocked and they do not have coast but still survive. But in the case of Ethiopia, they said no, we used to have it and we must have it again.
Mm.
Quite irredentist, but I mean, every country
But
has
do
a
you
way
think
of rationalizing.
do you think it's probably because they are the largest economy in the region, so
Yes,
therefore
yes,
they need to have a port because a connecting port will always mean like maybe a delay in transportation of goods and services, and they need to move fast, due
yeah.
to the global
Let
happening
me,
and the activities of the Houthis in the Red Sea.
yeah, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Switzerland is one of the most efficient and strong economies in Europe,
Yeah.
and it is a landlocked economy.
Landlocked country.
Switzerland is a
Yes.
landlocked economy. But Switzerland has, some time ago, I was writing a paper and I realized that they own the second largest shipping company in Europe, Switzerland.
Wow.
And it is a landlocked country, but they own the second largest shipping company. So if you don't have port, how do you own the second largest? Because you were able to cooperate with others to make it happen. You do not need a coast, direct coast, in order to survive. If you have cooperation with Djibouti, Eritrea, or other coastal states, you can still survive. That is what I think. Because this is not time to redefine borders. This is not time to have wars over borders. So there's always to be the need. And then when you have the opportunity to sign a pact, it's not a territory that is not even recognized by international law, like Somaliland. So these are some of the issues that need to be trashed out. Ethiopia is a great nation that is growing. The Ethiopian airline is the largest airline in the continent. The last time I was in
Yeah.
Ethiopia, they were building the largest airport in the continent. They are building the largest airport, which means a country that is doing so well, they should look within, exploit. It's a vast land with nice people. They should exploit those opportunities for the betterment of the country. Now, if you take Sudan, that is the boiling point in that region. Sudan, from a very progressive and country that is, economically strong, has all of a sudden become is becoming a failed state, or it is failing as a state. Now in Sudan, we have the Saudis and the Emirates establishing farms, gold fields, and other economic interests. Currently, those interests has become more or less a curse, so to speak, in the conflict because of those interests, these Gulf states have taken sides, and that is not helping with finding viable solutions to the conflict. That is also another important thing. Then you talk of great power competition. Russia wants to have a base along the Red Sea, and it sees Sudan, Port Sudan, as a very viable point to do that. Because of that, Russia switched from the RSF to the SAF in order to achieve that.
Yeah.
But US is doing everything possible to avoid that because they don't want a situation where one day Russia gets up and maintains a chokehold in that very vital corridor to
Means
disrupt international trade. Already, the Houthis are
exactly,
doing
which means they
this.
can also threaten. Which means they can also threaten NATO if they can get a base
Of
on the
course,
Red
of
Sea
course,
coast.
of course,
Mm.
practically, because
Yeah.
the Red Sea, the largest area distance is about 300 nautical miles. That every navy, the smallest navy can cause problem, and that is why the Houthis are causing problems in that corridor. It's not that wide, so that is very
Mm.
important, and it is because of the proximity of the Red Sea to the Arabian Peninsula. That is one of the reasons the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and others are maintaining their presence in this conflict. They want to control how things turn out because the outcome of that conflict could have ramifications for their own security. Thank you. And then
Thank you
you
very much.
mentioned North Africa. North
Yeah,
Africa,
yeah. In North Africa,
definitely
the
Libya.
the Libya, yeah, Libya. They've been having how do I
Yes,
say it? They've
Libya
been
is
having yeah, Libya, North Africa. They've been having conflict. The armed groups, especially in the capital, which have not been able to agree with themselves on anything. And then the government of the government in the capital, in the western-backed capital, recently launched an offensive in the Zawiya coastal region to protect oil assets. So there's also it's been Libya, this instability. You and I know the story. It's been it's been
yes,
like
sir.
that for years, and following the fall of Gaddafi, and then the strategic positioning in along along the Mediterranean Sea too makes it a very, very important hotspot to monitor.
Yeah. So that is also true, and because of this, great powers like Russia will exploit such differences to
Mm.
side with one against the other, and also maintain their interests. Like Russia has redirected its military asset from Syria to Libya, therefore establishing an uninterrupted supply line to the Sahel. That is going to be very, very interesting to watch in the coming days, Abu.
Oh, thank you very much. Before we wrap this up, I I wanted to talk about something in the in that can that in the I don't know how to put it in the about availability of water resources, how it can shape conflicts in the future. And experts have said that the diminishing availability of our water resources should be considered one of the most pressing economy and security challenges in the century, considering the deepening climate crisis. This can be seen in the situation of the Ethiopia Egypt uh, problem with regards to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that has been causing conflict between Egypt and Ethiopia. Egypt sees that this can affect its irrigation and water supply for agriculture and food supply. So even as the dam is completed, it has not affected Egypt's water flow, but there are suspicions that in the future it could affect the supply flow, and Ethiopia has not guaranteed water supply in case of famine. So do you see this situation coming into the fore again and causing a bit of conflict and disagreement in this 2025?
Even before I move to North Africa and Horn of Africa, in the case
Mm,
of the Nile River, I would like to talk
mm,
of River Niger.
yeah. Mm,
Taking its source from Guinea and emptying its waters in Nigeria. The river goes through very important countries, and its basin covers multiple countries. Now, the question is, currently, we have Mali recording the highest temperature in the world in recent months, which means more evaporation and the drying of water bodies at a time that they may need it for farming and things like that. Now, we are dealing with a military junta that is not willing to cooperate with ECOWAS.
mm,
Let's say a major dam is built across the river, or Mali decides to harvest as much as it wants.
mm,
That is going to affect economies downstream.
yeah.
How do you cooperate with such military leaders in order to make sure that the people in northern Nigeria who depend on the river, the people between Niger and Benin border, where the river seems to be the natural border, how are they going to benefit from the river? And how do you establish that? So rivers or water bodies are going to be very important in the geopolitics of Africa. Now to your question about the Nile.
Mm,
Interestingly, Ethiopia and Egypt are the two most powerful countries in are among the most powerful countries in North Africa and the Horn of Africa. In fact, in terms of population, they are number two and number three. They follow each other in population. In terms of economy, they are growing. They are among the top five. In terms of uh, uh, um, um, resources, they all have the resources. But the question is, how do you make sure that these powerful countries that are growing benefit from this water body? Natural, I mean, it is naturally available. Without the other, is it a zero-sum game, or there can be a win-win position? Now, the history of the Nile River goes back to the 19th century. Deals were signed that looked like alienated Ethiopia at the time, did not consider
yeah.
Ethiopia very much. But
Yeah.
Currently, about 70% of the water comes from Ethiopia. So the Nile River takes two sources, the Blue Nile and the White Nile. The White Nile coming all the way from Uganda, in the marshy areas of Uganda, through the Lake Victoria. And the Blue Nile coming from the Ethiopian highlands. Now you realize that Ethiopia has been experiencing famine and drought for a long time. In fact, IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, was established because of drought and later metamorphosed to, political integration
Issue.
and cooperation.
Yeah.
So Ethiopia sees that this is the opportunity for us to turn things around and make sure that we regain millions of hectares of land in order to survive. Egypt is saying that, well, without the Nile, we are nothing. And that is true. So we are not going to compromise on that. These two countries, Egypt has even gone to the extent of threatening the destruction of the great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Ethiopia has also acquired surface to air missiles in
Missiles.
wait for any attack of that nature. This means some kind of arms race happening because of a river that could be shared. So I think that despite, some time ago, Abiy Ahmed was in Cairo and there seemed to be some cordiality between himself and Sisi. But he came back and the conflict was still continuing. And currently, that river politics is extending to the Somaliland Somalia issue,
Somalia issue.
where
Yeah.
Egypt has vowed to support Somalia.
Somalia.
But
And in
it's
fact,
so
there are
clear
even
that had
forces.
it not been,
There are even forces. There are even
yes,
Egyptian forces in Somalia now, and
exactly,
they've been giving weapons to Somalia in their fight against Al
yeah,
Shabaab.
and yes. So the fact is, had it not been this river politics, I don't see Egypt doing that. They would rather call for some peace or some level-headedness in this whole issue, and even perhaps become a
Yeah.
mediator. But then
Yeah.
the old saying goes, "The enemy of your enemy becomes your
Your friend.
friend," and it is becoming more or less
Yeah.
a very interesting geopolitics happening
Geopolitics.
in the region, which has
Yeah.
the potential to escalate.
Yeah.
Because with all this, Sudan is in between the two countries. But
Yeah.
because Sudan is currently very weak, we don't see any serious information coming from them because the soldiers are occupied with how to dislodge the RSF from the
Themselves.
urban strategic position they've taken in the urban centers. So these are the
Yeah.
things. But you can imagine,
Yeah.
and I think that the river politics is also affecting the finding of solutions for the Sudanese conflict.
Conference.
So
Yes.
these are some of the challenges. Yeah, Abu.
Thank you very much for this awesome, comprehensive analysis. Before you go, please do. I know you are going to give us a personal shout out on LinkedIn. That one is by the way. So please, please do tell your fans, as I said to my former guest, to like, subscribe, and follow us at Geopolitics with Abu. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Abu, I've known Abu for some time, and he's a very hardworking young man. I work with him, and this platform he's providing in order to get the many aspects that he has come to know throughout his professional career to express themselves or talk about issues, especially concerning Africa. And I think that he needs that kind of support. So kindly subscribe to Abu's platform, and you are sure to get quality and consistent information on Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye, Friday. We'll talk.
Bye, 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 bye.
Bye.